lie, I read 8 books in June, which isn't bad, but I had a very bumpy reading month because especially at the beginning, I felt almost like I was in a slump. I started so many books, but nothing really could hold my attention until I decided to read one book that I knew I would love, and I don't know, I just had such a big craving for it, and thank goodness, because after that I felt so much better with my reading and I finished all the other books that I started. But because of that I only read 8 books this month, since at the beginning I wasn't really reading anything. Before we go into the nitty-gritty of the books, let's talk about the June reading statistics. And in total, as I said, I read 8 books, and those 8 books added up to 2,769 pages, and my overall rating for June was 3.4. And in terms of genre, I didn't really vary a lot. I stayed mainly in romance. I read 6 romances and 2 fantasies, and I equally read 4 books that were part of a series and 4 books that were standalones. And when we talk about my TBR of June, I did an awful job, the worst yet. I only read 1 book from my June TBR, but that wasn't due to the books on there. But since I didn't really feel like reading and nothing really caught my eye at the beginning, I just had to mood read, really, because I feel if I had forced myself to read anything that I wasn't particularly in the mood for, I would have been so much deeper in the book slump. So yeah, I couldn't really follow that up. But I have a good feeling for July's TBR, so we'll see how that one goes. But yeah, this month we just gonna forget that I had a set TBR, you know? Let's not talk about it. Let's rather talk about the 8 books that I did read this month. Well, the first book that I have here is actually the one that I did read from my TBR this month. That is The Blonde Identity by Ellie Carter. And this is a very short book. It's under 300 pages. And this was a very cute, fun read. That is a bit different than your normal rom-com, I would say, because you have a bit of a mystery part. Our main character wakes up in the middle of winter in Paris and she lost all her memory, but a man is telling her that she should run, and she finds out pretty soon that a lot of people are after her, and that guy that told her to run is actually a spy and supposedly on her side, and together they kind of want to find out what happened to her. And of course that stranger is also very attractive. So I feel like the synopsis already make up such a fun plot, and it really is. I wouldn't say the romance in here is anything too deep, and especially I guess since it is quite a short book and you have quite a lot of things happening, that first of all, this is very unrealistic. Therefore, I gave it 3 stars. It was very easy to get through. And if you like movies that are rom-com but also have a lot of action, like for example the movie Ghosted, I think if you like something like that, then you will also enjoy this book. But don't expect like a deeply emotional romance. That's just not what the book is supposed to be. But for what it is, I think it's very fun and different, and I enjoyed my time here. And I was already kind of struggling to get through that book, although it is very tiny, and it's not because of the book, just because I just didn't feel great. And I started so many books and just none of them were hitting the mark, even though I knew they were good and I would usually enjoy them. I just knew I was sliding right into a book slump, and there was one book that my mind was going back to, and I was like, let's just do it. Let's read it. I didn't feel great, but after reading that book, I felt so much better. And I'm talking about A Court of Mist and Fury by the Sarah J. Maas. I already had the highest expectations and hopes for this book, but man, they were all met or even exceeded. I love this book with everything I am, everything I have. This is part of me now. Like, I can't explain to you how much this book meant to me, especially because I didn't feel great during the time. I read this book in less than 2 days. And of course, this is 5 stars. I won't say too many things about it because I did a whole reading vlog just for this book. It's non-spoiler, so even if you haven't read this series, you can still watch that video. And I'm sure most of you guys have read this book. But in case that one of you have doubts or aren't sure if you want to read this, I highly encourage you to read the ACOMAF series. This is the 2nd book in the series. The first one is A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I already loved that one. And I think that was just the perfect setup for this book, and everything in here was just so amazing. I will say that it does have a lot of fantasy. I mean, obviously this is fantasy, but I mainly got into this series because of the romance in here as well. And although I love the whole fantasy plot and I'm such a huge fan, and now I consider myself a thorough fantasy reader, I just sometimes am still surprised that there's other things going on. And for those romance girls out there that mainly read these things for romance, I just want to say that there are a lot of other side plots, but I feel like they all add up to this incredible story. Like, nothing in here to me was unnecessary. And I mean, this book is over 600 pages and I wanted more. Like, when I was like 70% into the book, I was like, no, I still want more. Like, I didn't want this book to ever be finished. I'm so glad that I still have the other ACOTAR books, but I really want to spread out reading them because they're like everything to me and I don't want them to be over. I'm for sure gonna reread this. This is like 1,000,000 stars. Go watch that reading vlog if you want to see more of my thoughts, but this was a banger and best book probably of the year. So after ACOMAF, I felt so much better about reading stuff, but we're going from a 5-star directly into a 1-star. And that was another book that I already started before I read these ones. And that book was absolutely awful. I'm talking about Love Game by Emma Ray. And I also have a video on that book, so I already told you guys how much I disliked the book. And I only finished it because I was reading it for that video. And since it was the only one for that vlog, I wanted to finish it and read it. But I don't encourage anyone to read this book. I thought I wanted a tennis romance and there are not enough out there. But this one is not the one you should read if you want a tennis romance. I'm gonna try out another one soon, so I hope I can recommend you a tennis romance in the future, but this is not the one. If you don't like cheating, don't read this book. I feel like both main characters were so awful. The main female character had basically no respect towards herself. And what I especially hated is that the narrator or the author wanted the reader to believe that cheating is okay when the person you basically cheat on is awful or bad, and it's just not an excuse. And I hated that that was basically the underlying pull to make me believe that, oh yeah, it is so cute and romantic what they do and totally okay because the person they cheat on is actually awful. And yeah, the person wasn't the greatest, but she was not that bad, and she, even so, like, she just didn't deserve that, and it doesn't make cheating okay. And I'm not even saying that I hate cheating in books, because I have read cheating tropes in the past that I didn't hate. It was just so badly done in this book, especially because the two main characters just didn't want to take responsibilities for what they did. And as I said, made excuses where, you know, I still feel like you can't excuse it, you're still hurting someone. And there were more stuff that I really didn't like about that book, but I have a video on it, I already said it there, and I feel like this book just doesn't deserve any more of my attention or anger. So let's skip to another one. 1 star for Love Game. The next book was the first new release that I read for this month, and that is Not in Love by the Ellie Hazelwood. And I was so excited for this book. I still liked it, but it was very different from her other reads. It wasn't really a rom-com. And I think the main thing that made this book different to me is that the writing style felt more elegant and sophisticated and not as much Ellie Hazelwood-like in her past novel. Her first book comes from like the fan fiction point, and I don't want to compare these writing styles as one is good or one is bad. I truly like both, and I think both are great and have a purpose. And I really liked her more fan fiction writing style. It was just so easy to go through, so much fun, and it hooked you right away. And this one made beautiful writing. I mean, I tapped this book, but it also kind of felt a little bit more detached, at least to me. I didn't really connect with the characters and not really with the romance, so I gave this a 3.5 star. I read this for a reading vlog as well, where I read all the new releases, and I go way more into detail about how I felt about this book there, so go watch that one if you're interested. Before I went into the next new release, I actually finished up Caught Up by Liz Tomford. I really wanted to read Caught Up before her new book Play Along came out, so I made it a priority for June. And again, that was also a book I started at the beginning of the month, but again, it was that I didn't really finish any of the books that I started, so it took me a while to get through, not because the book was bad or anything. I actually really liked that, and I think the Windy City series by Liz Tomford is one of my favorites. It is incredible. I gave Caught Up 4 stars, and truly, this book is a homage to Good Dads. Holy hell, like the dads in here were the stars. And I'm not just talking about our main character, Daddy Kai. No, I'm talking about other dads in that book as well. And what I especially loved, since I like the series so much, is the found family aspect. I loved their Sunday family dinners where the characters from the other two books were also involved and they live on the same street, and it made me so happy. Like, I lived for those scenes, and I'm so glad that we have at least another 2 books, I think, and I'm very looking forward to play along. Caught Up is a sports romance where Kai is a baseball player and he became a dad recently, and very unexpected, because he didn't even know the woman he slept with got pregnant, and she basically just left his son when he was, I think, 6 months old at his threshold and said, I can't deal with this responsibilities, he is yours now. Everything for him changed basically overnight, and he himself changed a lot because of that as well. So he feels like he can't really just go out and have fun anymore. And you can just see that there's so much weight on his shoulders and he has such a hard time letting other people in. And Milla was such a fun character. She was this carefree but very high achieving woman. And she had such a cool career, I think. She was basically a dessert maker for like high-end restaurants. And although she kind of felt like it's not really her dream anymore, just felt like she had to do this career to be basically the best of the best. And she becomes the nanny for the summer because her dad is actually the coach of the team. And since she has the summer off, she wants to spend some time with her dad. And the only real way to do that is if she's with the team. And she can only be with the team if she becomes the nanny of Kai's little kid. And if you like a single dad nanny romance, then I would definitely recommend this book. I think it was just a teensy bit long, especially since we basically know from the beginning what the conflict will be. So there was really nothing unexpected, and I think it dragged out a little bit. So I think this was probably my least favorite out of the series, but I mean, it was still a 4-star and such a great read. Then after that single dad nanny romance, I read another single dad nanny romance, and that was Lawrence Asher's new release, Love Unwritten. And I also read that for the new releases video, and I say Love Rewritten so many times, but it's actually Love Unwritten. I think in my brain I just changed it up because it's Love Redesigned, and I just want to make it the same, Love Rewritten. And that was such a beautiful book, such a beautiful story, but I didn't expect anything else from Lauren Asher. She's one of my favorite authors, and I think she did an incredible job. This is for the girlies who love a slow burn. To me, the pacing was so fitting for these characters. Both of our main characters are very, very broken at the beginning, and you just know that you're going on a healing journey with this book. Son of Raphael is actually a bit older. He's 8 or 9, I think, and he has a condition where they already know that he's gonna lose his eyesight when he's around 20. So you're dealing with a very heavy topic here, and you can see that health problem also influences the relationships around Raphael, and especially with his son. And Ellie has been the nanny for quite some time now. She sees that these 2 guys are struggling and she kind of wants to help them, but she also has her own things in her life that aren't great. And it was just so satisfying seeing those 2 characters grow and help each other. And I think that a lot of people will like this book. I gave this book 4 stars, and I think maybe at another time I would have given it a higher rating. But a single dad and nanny romance is not really my favorite, and I've just read 2 other ones before that, and I think I'm just a little bit over that trope now. However, I still recommend it. It's such a good book. Then my last book I read for my new releases in June is a novel love story by Ashley Poston. And this one is magical realism, where our main character drives into the city out of her favorite fictional book series, and there she meets other characters from her favorite book series, but also a guy she can't quite place, and she believes that she needs to help these characters to find their happily ever after, because the author of the book series actually died and the last book has never been finished. So she thinks since she's there, she can basically finish their stories and find their happily ever after. I like this book because it was different from your usual rom-com, but I feel like that the magical realism element in here was a bit much for me. Like, this felt almost more fantasy than romance, and I didn't really feel the spark between these 2, especially her. She had so much growing to do and finding herself and what she wanted out of life that the romance kind of felt more like a side plot, and therefore I gave this only a 3.5 star. The 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston was so incredible that I felt a little bit let down that this didn't live up to my love for The 7 Year Slip. My last book that I finished for June is A Nectar of the Wicked by Ella Fields, and this was also one that I started at the beginning of the month but only finished at the very end of the month. This is the first book of the Deadly Divine Duet. Leah is a changeling and she badly wants to find out who her family is and therefore also where she comes from, who she is. But there's no way for her to go back into the fairy realm. She lives with the humans. But there's one fae that comes to her and offers her to basically answer all her questions in return for her marrying him. And as soon as I read that plot, I was like, of course, this has me written all over because I love a marriage of convenience. And this was good. I think especially if you want a non-slow burn, very spicy fantasy, then this would be for you. In addition, if you don't read a lot of fantasies, this is also a great introduction because it doesn't really have a lot of world building. I think it's very easy to jump into this one. And if you want like a spicy romance but make it fantasy, then this is probably for you. 2/3 of this book, I wasn't really invested in the story, but I would have wished that the plot was just more, especially at the beginning. I think we were focusing so much on their attraction that it took away from any plot that could have been happening, any hints of what to do, because I was like, what is even happening besides you guys liking each other? But after 2/3, once the plot did start, I was flying through this book and I'm so excited to get to the next one. Actually, I gave the first one 3 stars because the beginning wasn't very interesting and it took me a while to get into it, but now I'm invested. And I think also I like that this is only a duet and you can read it quicker and it's not a very long fantasy series. So if this sounds like something you would like, I would recommend trying this one out. And with that, we have June wrapped up. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think if you read any of these books in the comments, and give this video a like and also subscribe for more bookish content in the future. I'll see you in my next one. Bye!